Hey, it's Marklin here with your video thought for the day. My hair's sticking up. Can't control it. Speaking of controlling, I want to talk to you about controlling the tongue today. This week, I'm looking at 5 of the 10 features our new pastor, Jarrett Stephens, gave the staff at a chapel retreat as characteristics and traits to work on. And I thought they were so incredible, I wanted to grab 5 of the 10 and use one each day this week. So today we're going to use his one where he talked about the importance of holding your tongue, controlling your tongue. The tongue's very powerful. And he said for his folks on staff, our pastors and administrators and people, to be high on praise and low on criticism, to speak words of life into people. And that's a marvelous thing to do. It caused me to reflect, and what I'd like to do in the video thought for the day is look at just briefly the Epistle of James. Now, the Epistle of James is one that was actually written by Jesus's brother, James. And it's pretty cool to think we've got some writings. Some believe it's the very first book written in the New Testament. But we've got writings that show not only the influence of Jesus on his younger brothers, but also show some of the knowledge and upbringing that would have been present in that household. And so I took the book of James and just looked at it for what it said about holding your tongue and controlling your tongue. And boy, does it say a lot. If you just start in the first chapter, in the 19th verse, it tells you to be quick to listen and slow to speak. That's pretty good. I'm a lawyer. I'm a trial lawyer. I almost do the exact opposite. I'm quick to speak and slow to listen. Yet I'll tell you, even in trying cases and having a witness on the stand, I do so much better as a lawyer if I listen to what the witness says. And I'm careful to listen to that testimony before I cross-examine it. So, be quick to listen and slow to speak, part of bridling or holding on to the tongue. Now, in this first chapter, also in verse 26, there's another reference where James says, if anybody thinks they're religious, you think you're devout, and you don't bridle or control your tongue, then you're living in deception because you're deceiving your heart, and your religion, he says, is worthless. I mean, how many people want to be religious and dedicated to their faith? A lot. Odds are you do if you're listening to this. But if you can't bridle and control your tongue, you're living in deception, James said. And your religion is worthless. Now, as you roll into the 3rd chapter, James goes into a whole lot more. He starts out that chapter by warning people about being teachers. He says, let not many of you want to be a teacher. I love to teach at church. I love to teach in these video thoughts for the day, but that's a sober warning. Because when we're teaching, we need to be using our words as words that build up, words that transform, words of life. Because the tongue, like chapter 3 says in verse 4, as a metaphor, you take the biggest ship and they're turned by a small rudder. And the tongue is a lot like that. The small tongue can turn your whole life or the life of someone else around. And then the next analogy or metaphor is in verse 5, and it talks about, James said, think about how great a blaze is set by just a small fire. I think about those forest fires in California and the Midwest. Just one small fire causes massive destruction. And James says the tongue is a fire. What you can do with your tongue has incredible destructive ability as well as constructive ability. But be careful, because James said in verse 8, humans don't really tame the tongue. So we have to always be cautious and be alert, because it's a restless evil just waiting to happen. He says it's full of poison. And he says, think about it. From the same tongue can come blessing and cursing. So we need to be careful as we roll into the 4th chapter. And James says, don't speak evil against others. Don't be boastful about what you're going to be doing and what you're going to accomplish. All of this is part of bridling the tongue. And so I love Pastor Jarrett's point. It's our video thought for the day. I'm going to spend today trying to speak words of life into people, not harshness and not bitterness. I want people who hear my words to be built up and encouraged and drawn to God. That's your video thought for the day.